I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Barcelona terrorist has been found and neutralized. North Korea is caught red-handed sending deadly cargo to Syria, and the United Nations surprises some Gaza kids with an amazing gift. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. After a massive 5-day manhunt across Europe, Spanish police have finally cornered and shot dead the main suspect in Barcelona's horrific terror attack.
Poc abans de les 5 de la tarda, els Mossos d'Esquadra han abatut a Younes Abu Yaqub, el conductor de la furgoneta i autor material de l'atemptat de Barcelona, que dijous va provocar la mort de 14 persones.
The suspect was a 22-year-old Moroccan who grew up in the Catalonian community of Spain, where, to the outside world at least, he appeared to have integrated completely into Spanish society before being radicalized by a local Islamic terror cell. Even his neighbors and co-workers were shocked to learn that the young man they'd known for years, who had a comfortable factory job and a home, turned out to be behind the murder of 15 people in Barcelona, Spain. The suspect was spotted about an hour outside of Barcelona by a citizen who'd recognized his face.
Una trucada ciutadana que han avisat els Mossos i com es fa amb totes les trucades que hi ha i tots els avisos, s'ha anat a comprovar i efectivament era la persona més buscada d'aquests últims dies i els Mossos amb una gran actuació.
When police arrived at the scene, the suspect was wearing what appeared to be a belt of explosives, causing the police to open fire and ultimately kill him. The world is still reeling from the tragic events of the terror attack he committed, but for now, police seem satisfied to have neutralized the main suspect behind it all.
It looks like President Trump is doubling down on America's ongoing war in Afghanistan. After months of internal debate in the White House over issues of strategy, President Trump is now renewing United States involvement in the war and committing even more American boots on the ground in Afghanistan.
Micromanagement from Washington, D.C. does not win battles. They are won in the field, drawing upon the judgment and expertise of wartime commanders and frontline soldiers, acting in real time with real authority and with a clear mission to defeat the enemy. That's why we will also expand authority for American armed forces to target the terrorist and criminal networks that sow violence and chaos throughout Afghanistan. These killers need to know they have nowhere to hide, that no place is beyond the reach of American might and American arms.
Though Trump hasn't yet offered many details for the renewed military effort, officials are reporting that the president has just greenlit the defense secretary's request to deploy 4,000 additional troops to the war-torn region. It's clear that President Trump is planning to put additional pressure on Pakistan as well, a country he claims has sheltered extremists while also receiving billions of United States dollars annually. The Taliban has already lashed back at President Trump's announcement, with a Taliban spokesman saying, quote, "Instead of the continuing of war in Afghanistan, Americans should have thought about withdrawing their soldiers," end quote. But President Trump seems unwilling to back down, offering no timetable for pulling troops out of the region. On the contrary, it seems now that he's willing to fight for as long as it takes.
Our troops will fight to win. We will fight to win. From now on, victory will have a clear definition: attacking our enemies, obliterating ISIS, crushing Al-Qaeda, preventing the Taliban from taking over Afghanistan, and stopping mass terror attacks against America.
Now, there are currently over 8,000 troops deployed in Afghanistan, which means that Trump's new strategy could add nearly 50% or more American troops to the fray. Well, the United Nations has just released a bombshell. They're accusing North Korea of violating international sanctions and putting chemical weapons directly in the hands of Syria. In its latest report, the UN goes on to list countless other cooperations between North Korea and Syria, including weapon repairs and advanced missile programs.
This is, of course, a massive violation of sanctions placed against North Korea and Syria. The report specifies that 2 shipments of chemical weapons from North Korea to Syria were actually intercepted within the last year, revealing the full extent of military cooperation between the two countries. Syria had agreed to dismantle its chemical weapons back in 2013, but has since been accused of using toxic sarin gas against its own people on at least 2 occasions. Syrian President Assad has repeatedly denied using any such chemical weapons, but the proof is quickly mounting against him. Investigators have long suspected that President Assad has maintained secret chemical weapons plants within Syria for years, which would certainly explain the shipments from North Korea. This report comes just days before the 4-day anniversary of the Ghouta chemical attack, which saw hundreds of Assad regime opposers gassed and killed in their own neighborhoods. Syria and North Korea are refusing to comment on the report so far, indicating there could be real consequences on the way.
Joining me now in the studio to try and tackle the ongoing issues in Syria is former Israeli ambassador to the United States and the founder of The Truth About Israel, Dani Ayalon. Thank you so much for coming in, Ambassador.
My pleasure, Aaron.
All right, so my first question is, when North Korea is sending chemical weapons to Syria and Iran and Turkey are joining forces in the region and strengthening their hold in the area, all despite numerous other countries, including Russia, the United States, Egypt, Jordan, from trying to set up peace talks, what conclusions are you drawing at this moment?
It's a game changer. Certainly we see a new landscape strategically. And it has begun 2 years ago when the Russians went full force into Syria, aided of course by the Iranians and Hezbollah and other Shia militias. After 2 years, I guess pretty much they declare victory. On the other hand, the United States is nowhere to be seen, and the U.S. just, I would say, gave up supporting the organizations, the militias that were in favor, that were pro-U.S. and pro-Westerns. So the situation right now that Syria just lays prey for Iran, for Hezbollah, and of course the umbrella of Russian army.
So, okay, this is clearly going against any notion that Syria has been free of chemical weapons for years and years and years, and that they've been abiding by certain international agreements. So, in what way is the international community going to get involved? Are they going to get involved? Is this enough to put fire under them, or is that,
Yeah, well, at this point, I think it certainly points to the fact that you cannot believe anything in the region, not verbal commitments and not even written ones. Supposedly, the Syria got rid of all its chemical weapons stocks. Clearly, it's not the case. Not only that, they have been replenished through the aid of North Korea. North Korea has been a main supplier of technology and also of other type of unconventional weapons, including technology for delivery systems, also to Iran, not just to Syria. So certainly we see now a continued and even reinforced cooperation. Very bad news, and whether the UN or the international community can get involved, I'm not sure. Russia is there with boots on the ground, so pretty much it is the responsibility of the Russians now to make sure that no weapon unconventional gets into the wrong hands, including Assad's hands.
So you said two things that I wanted to touch upon. Number one, you said it was a game changer, which of course it is. And number two, you pointed out that the United States seems to be, laying down ahead of this and kind of allowing this to proceed, and not being the active force that we would have hoped to see in the region. So what can be done, and what fears should Israel be taking, if you would prioritize the issues that this brings up, how would Israel?
Well, first of all, Aaron, and you have showed here President Trump's speech re-Afghanistan. So certainly the United States have different priorities. North Korea, of course, Afghanistan. So the Middle East is at the bottom of the list, which means that we must get very, very firm understandings with Russia vis-a-vis the positioning of Hezbollah and Iran in Syria.
Is this to allow us to operate?
It's first of all, it's to create a buffer whereby the Iranians or Hezbollah cannot come to our borders on the Syrian side, on the other side of the Golan Heights. And secondly, which is not less important, is not to allow the Iranians to build weapon factories, not in Lebanon for Hezbollah and not in Syria for Assad. In that respect, I think we have to have a very, very clear red lines. This is a red line for us, and we will not allow it.
All right, well, thank you so much, Ambassador Dani Ayalon. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Now, for the first time in 3 years, it looks like Egypt is about to permanently reopen the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza. Here to elaborate on what that means is ILTV's Brett Allen Smith. Now, Brett, could you put into context just how significant that crossing is?
Thanks, Aaron. Well, both Egypt and Israel have placed severe restrictions on any movement for years in and out of Gaza. And that's a policy that's only gotten stricter over time, especially in the wake of the Second Intifada in 2000 and then Hamas's takeover of the Gaza Strip in 2007. Now, the Rafah border crossing is the only one of its kind between Gaza and Egypt, and for all kinds of security reasons, it's been practically inactive for years. But we're getting word now that Egypt is about to reopen Rafah on a permanent basis as soon as next month, which could really mean huge changes in Gaza.
All right, now I'm sure security is one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind here. So how will Egypt ensure that this crossing being open doesn't allow new weapons in or out of Gaza? And what's with the timing? Why open the crossing now?
It's a good question. Well, conditions are, of course, only getting worse and worse in the Strip every day, and it's the citizens of Gaza who are caught in the middle. For months now, the Palestinian Authority has been cutting critical financial aid to Gaza power generators, giving households only a few hours of electricity every day, and even denying medical aid to Gazans who desperately need treatment abroad. So the reopening of the border is a solution reached by Egypt, Hamas, and the Fatah PA, and hopefully one that's going to ease the humanitarian crisis there.
All right, well, let's check out your report.
For the citizens of Gaza, the Rafah border crossing has been a monument of dwindling hope for the last 3 years. As the only crossing point with Egypt, the gates have remained mostly closed due to ongoing security threats to both Egypt and Israel, leaving the citizens of Gaza trapped in worsening conditions under militant Hamas rule. But now, Egypt may be just weeks away from reopening the crossing on a permanent basis, which would be a welcomed relief to the thousands of Gazans waiting to leave seeking critical medical treatment, education, and work. Sources are saying that Egypt has completely renovated the checkpoint, which has been at the center of decades of terror attacks and friction, with state-of-the-art security systems linked all the way to Cairo. Now, Egypt has not officially given word that it plans on reopening this border, but officials from the Palestinian Authority who brokered the deal claim the calendar is already set, which could mean major changes for the people of Gaza are already on the way.
Now, if you are a fan of staying hydrated, then listen up, because this next story is for you. The Israeli Water Authority has just announced some shocking news. Nearly 3/4 of gas stations and storage tanks are leaking into Israel's groundwater. This is an extremely troubling statistic because pollution like this is often toxic and carcinogenic.
In some cases, the pollution was so bad that gasoline could be seen floating on top of the water, while in other cases it had already dissolved into the water, leaving significant trace amounts. But it only takes a tiny amount of gasoline to render an entire supply of water undrinkable, which should be a major cause of panic for Israel's Ministry of Environmental Protection and the Water Authority. Unfortunately, this is yet another negative report on Israel's water, as last year the Water Authority revealed that over a fifth of Israel's drinking water facilities had been shut down due to contamination. Now, agencies are placing this problem at the very top of their priorities, a burden which will also need to be carried by the gas companies themselves. Water is an extremely precious commodity in Israel and indeed the Middle East, so all parties will need to act fast before this gets out of control.
All right, now the citizens of Gaza almost never get permission to see beyond their own borders, but 91 Palestinian children from Gaza just had the experience of a lifetime and were given their first glimpse ever of the city of Jerusalem.
In a student exchange program overseen by the United Nations, 91 kids, all aged 14, were granted permission by Israel to leave Gaza for a 5-day summer camp program. For most of these children, who've been living in poverty-level conditions under militant Hamas's rule their entire lives, these are the first steps ever outside the Strip. And for all of them, it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see the ancient city of Jerusalem. The kids visited not only the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where they prayed at one of their holiest sites, but they also toured the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the place where Christians and Jews believe Jesus Christ was crucified and buried. The program director from the United Nations was there to see the kids' faces as they experienced a whole new world. Quote, "They were over the moon excited. There's really no other way to describe it," end quote. The kids will now continue to tour parts of the Palestinian Authority-controlled West Bank, including the capital of Ramallah. And while it's hard to argue with the look of sheer wonder on these children's faces, many are questioning why the United Nations program is only limited to Gaza-PA relations, and why the tour doesn't extend to introduce Gazans and Israelis as well. UNRWA, who organized the exchange, has frequently come under fire by Israel, accused of perpetuating anti-Semitism and anti-Israel teachings among Palestinian youths. We can only hope that one day soon, there will be more opportunities for the next generation to explore the other side, one that includes Israel as well.
We have been discussing a lot of amazing Israeli artists over the past few weeks, but today I wanted to introduce to you the beautiful works that you can find in South Tel Aviv's Ben Ami Gallery. So here with me now is artist and curator for the Ben Ami Gallery, Yochanan Herson. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Oh, my pleasure.
And my first question for you is, you just had a show called Kav Veketem, or Line and Dot, by an artist, Yael
Harpaz.
Yael Harpaz. Tell me a little bit about that show.
Well, we have a very diverse sort of agenda at the gallery. And we try to bring in people from the periphery and people who are not necessarily in Tel Aviv. And Yael Harpaz lives up in the sort of middle of Israel and is in herself a rather unique character. And she reached us through another artist. And then I went to visit her. And I encountered this wonderful human being with very intelligent and sort of exciting sort of approach to life, holistic and sort of spiritual and very practical. And we looked at her work, and there was this process of artistic integrity and depth and the ability to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a very visible theme in the works that we're seeing here. I mean, similar color palette, similar textures, similar materials.
Her color palette is very limited. She keeps it very much to blacks and whites and pinks and grays.
Shades of reds, yeah.
But she explores with the line and the dot, and that I think is like the foundation of a lot of art. Everything, and maybe even life. You could translate that down to a line and a dot. Sort of the line being the way we define things, the dot being the subconsciousness, and that's how she approaches her own work. She explores that way and pulls from her depth and her understanding and her life experience. This is the first time that she's exhibited, and it's exciting for us to be able to.
This is her first exhibit.
This is her first major exhibition.
Beautiful body of work for a first
incredible,
exhibit.
And it was exciting for me as a curator to be able to work with her and to choose the pieces which explain that character and that sort of depth of integrity and.
All right. Well. Okay, so I mean, I'd love to keep talking about Yael Harpaz, but unfortunately that show just ended.
That just show ended, although we have one more of her pieces which we'll be showing in a new show.
Okay, beautiful. So let's talk about the new show, because we've got about a minute
The new show
left.
is something I'm curating for Hakav Shel Orly and Guy. Orly and Guy are two Israeli sort of humanistic sort of. They work on television. They're great reporters, great humanists, and they've had this phone Orly and Guy for about 7 years, where people with problems with the bureaucracy and the jungle of legalities are able to get real help. They've been doing this voluntarily now for about 7 years, and we've decided to pull together an exhibition to raise some money so that they can actually go on doing this. And what you see now are parts of this Let's Give a Flower to Nurit. In Hebrew it sounds better, it comes from an Israeli song and poem. But the idea is we wanted to create a positive exhibition. And we chose the theme of flowers, and all sorts of flowers. There's like quite a few Israeli artists who have donated their paintings, their films, their photographs, their sculptures, and
if we look across the art world of how you can interpret the order of Draw Me a Flower, that could be
goes anywhere.
You can get everything.
So we have very sort of like incredible ceramics and some very colorful sort of art comics and some beautiful.
So tell me, I mean, we've only got a short minute left, but what do you think you want the message of the art of the gallery to be? What do you want people to get out of your gallery?
Our gallery has a social agenda. We try to reach out to all sorts of different people, some very established artists. We have some really big exhibitions coming up from people from outside of this country and some major artists here, as well as people like Yael Harpaz and many people who don't have the venue to be able to...
So is the idea really just to make art more accessible to a wider public?
To make it accessible. We are a cafe gallery. There's a cafe attached to us. So it's art in a public sort of environment, which makes it very accessible. The prices are, obviously ranging from very cheap to very expensive, but it's there for you to be able to explore.
Well, I think that is an incredible opportunity, and that's a really amazing message. The Ben Ami Gallery, it's in South Tel Aviv on Chashmal 12. All right, thank you so much for coming in, Johanan Harrison. All right, now a young couple was vacationing in the Greek islands back this past July, and now while that's not news, what is that on the final day of their romantic trip, they thought it'd be nice to send a message in a bottle off to sea. Well, exactly 6 weeks later, their message ended up in one of the unlikeliest of places, in the net of a fisherman off the Gaza coast.
For Jihad al-Sultan, it was certainly a surprising catch. The 54-year-old Gaza fisherman snagged the bottle just off the coast and found a letter scrolled inside it, along with some flowers. The message, written in English by Zach Mariner and Bethany Wright, reads, quote, "Hello, thank you for picking up this bottle. As a reward, here are some magic flowers. We are currently on holiday in Rhodes, and we would love to know how far this bottle got, even if it's just the next beach." End quote. I doubt they ever imagined their message would make it quite this far. After having a relative translate the message, al-Sultan was moved to discover such a message of peace reaching such troubled waters.
فأنا بتمنى كل صياد من قطاع غزة يزاول مهنة الصيد بحرية. كيف اجت هذه الزجاجة من اليونان بدون عوائق بحرية وبدون حواجز وبدون جيوش تمنعها، عدت كل الحدود هذه بدون أي مانع. احنا برضو كصيادين في قطاع غزة نمارس مهنة الصيد بحرية في مياهنا الإقليمية وفي المياه الدولية بحرية أسوة بباقي شعوب العالم.
The fisherman has since reached out to the couple on email, telling them that their message was the best thing in his life and wishing them peace and happiness from Gaza. This, for sure, is one incredible way to make a new pen pal.
Now, Air Canada is in a social media nosedive at the moment after a post their team made to Instagram. It turns out that complimenting the beauty of a city can really have an effect, an after effect rather, especially when that city happens to be Tel Aviv and the country is Israel. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here to give us more on the details and on the backlash. Emmanuel?
Yes, well, according to a report from an Israeli media source, Air Canada posted an Instagram post with a picture of the stunning city of Tel Aviv with the caption, "With non-stop service from Montreal and Toronto, sunny Tel Aviv is more accessible than ever. Discover how to save and splurge in Jaffa, an ancient port city and Tel Aviv's oldest neighborhood."
All right, well, I mean, that sounds pretty harmless, like a fairly straightforward advertisement, honestly. Just sending a little love our way and at the same time informing their clients that route is even an option. So what exactly is the problem here?
Well, you're right. But while Air Canada had good intentions, others took their innocent post to a negative side, and the company's website received unexpected and less than pleasant responses. They had comments like, "Shame on you, Air Canada, there's nothing called Israel," and, well, many, many more.
That's like a little crazy. Sometimes I feel like people have nothing better to do. I mean, they go all over the world and they have something to say, and if it wasn't Air Canada, it would be a different company.
100%.
It's just going out of one's way to deny the existence of a country and attacking an airline that simply flies there. I don't know. It's So what did Air Canada have to say in response?
Well, according to the report, Air Canada chose not to respond to the anti-Israel comments, but at the same time didn't delete them. It's important to mention that the comments they received on the post weren't all bad, and some even complimented the Canadian airline on the lines to Tel Aviv as well as the post.
All right, well, it's good to see some people are also out there going out of their way to say supportive and nice things.
Exactly.
Thank you, Emmanuel Kadosh, for coming in.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. If you just heard our story about a fisherman in Gaza who discovered a message in a bottle all the way from Greece, then you'll know why our Hebrew word for today is hoda'ah, which means message. And hoda'ah could mean all kinds of messages or notifications. There's the hoda'ah your friends send you on WhatsApp, or those annoying hoda'ot or messages that keep popping up on your home screen ever since you downloaded that stupid app and visited that site you probably shouldn't have. Now that being said, electronic hoda'ot or messages aren't the only kind. You've probably seen a paper hoda'ah at least once in a while, posted in the lobby of your community center or on a bulletin board in the street. Wherever the hoda'ah, these are all just different ways to lehodia or inform someone about what's going on. Get the hoda'ah?
The weather is brought to you by international singer-songwriter Sabina. Make sure to check out her latest album, Purple Ribbons, and get updated for upcoming concerts.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a low of 77 or 25 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect a slight rise in temperatures to a high of 88 or 31 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.62 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you for watching.